Okay, we're live. We're not going to talk about Fanta. We're going to talk about Ohio State football. Hello, I'm Austin Ward. Welcome into Lettermen Row Live, brought to you by Byers Automotive. It's another glorious day in Columbus, Ohio. I think the moods around here have been much higher since Saturday night, gentlemen. So I've got Jeremy Birmingham on my far left. He is a Lettermen Row recruiting guru and the co-author of the screenplay for Pitch Perfect 4. Boom, Herron there in the middle, former Ohio State and NFL running back, and another former Ohio State and NFL running back, Beanie Wells. You guys know them, contributing for us and talking about Ohio State all year round. So, gentlemen, 27-26 on Saturday night in Happy Valley. Quite a strange game the way it all played out. An interesting game to cover. You two guys there in the middle, did you guys have any doubts? At what point did you think about maybe turning off the game or flipping the channel and giving up on Ohio State, if you did at all?
I don't think I had any doubt, but I was a little nervous.
Okay.
26-14, it was a little nervous.
Beanie?
No, I was definitely nervous. I did have doubt. I mean, I didn't want to turn away from the football game, but watching Trace McSorley and watching him be the best player on the field in that football game was surprising. And watching him convert some of those, third and medium, third and long situations, I just knew without question he was going to get the ball the last play, extend it, and they were going to go kick a field goal and win it.
I know that Berm was ready to pack it in on Ohio State at one point. The tweet came out. He found a way to stop. He stopped taking pictures so that he could say, "Man, this feels a lot like those games that Urban's lost."
No, I had to go into the bunker, or whatever you want to call it, the closet that we were in, and I had to turn on some equipment to get it ready for post game. So I tweeted that it felt like a lot of the old losses in this Urban Meyer era. It felt similar to them. I didn't say they were going to lose, for all you people out there who wanted to do me a freezing cold take garbage. I said it.
But if it feels like a loss,
it felt like it was coming. Yeah, they were down 26-14 with 8 minutes to go. They were down 13-0 with 2 minutes to go in the first half. And if Tough Borland doesn't find a way to knock that ball out of Miles Sanders' hands, who the heck knows what happens there? But yeah, it did feel that way. And then all of a sudden, it didn't feel that way anymore because Ben Victor fell from heaven and took flight for 46 yards and then it didn't feel that way.
I think that's why Ryan Day was telling you several weeks ago, don't tweet. Because that existed. Now it's still up there.
I'm not backing down from it. I'm not going to remove it from the interwebs.
All right, fair enough. That Ben Victor play, guys, I mean, we've been talking about this guy as having maybe more potential than anybody at wide receiver for Ohio State for several years, and it hadn't shown up in terms of catches. He'd started blocking some guys. He needed to put on weight, needed the practice habits to come along. The individual effort that it takes to do what he did on that play, how special was that?
Well, I thought it was incredible. I mean, to be able to leap and lean back, and I mean, the guy's already a big kid, but to be able to, kind of twist his body and then to make the plays after the catch, I mean, at that given time, I mean, that certainly was his coming out party. I mean, if we had a coming out party at Ohio State, that was certainly it. In a big moment, you got a guy making a play that kind of sealed the fate for our offense. I mean, that's certainly it.
You're talking about coming out party, Beanie. I mean, Chase Young had himself one.
Oh, yeah.
Benjamin Victor had one. For people that, for whatever reason, forgot that Dwayne Haskins led a comeback at Michigan last year that felt like he needed to prove himself in a big road environment, you can count that as one, the way he played in the fourth quarter, 96-yard drive. I guess when you play in these games, you're going to find out what kind of dudes you really have on your roster. And I think, boom, Ohio State leaves this feeling like they found a lot of guys who can go compete for a championship.
Absolutely. I mean, like you said, for him to carry a 96-yard drive in Penn State on the road in that stadium, I mean, that's a great job. I mean, that's what kind of leader, that's what kind of quarterback we need to have, to seal these big-time games, especially on the road.
Yeah. The two of you guys, I mean, I know when you come in, you always want to see the backs have been involved. It seemed like it took a little while for them to either commit to the running game or to find maybe some consistent run blocking, but JK and Mike, I didn't think they played as significant a role as I thought that they would. Still got to win. JK played a little bit more in the passing game. But where do you guys sit right now? We asked last week if there were concerns about the rushing attack. Do you guys have any at this point?
Yeah, but it's still concerns. Obviously, when you're at Ohio State, you're supposedly going to be a dominant run football team. Past couple of weeks versus Tulane versus Penn State, we haven't been that. Now we were able to come away with the victory, so you kind of gloss over it. But when you're kind of dissecting this football team, that question mark is there. What's going on with the run game? Obviously, we were able to get J.K. involved in the pass, which certainly helped in the screen game.
Yeah.
But you want to see those guys to be able to chew up clock, be able to churn out yards in tough situations.
That screen game, boom, was pretty impressive down the stretch.
It was definitely impressive, and I thought they would have came to it earlier, but they came at it with the perfect timing, I would say, and with J.K. catching the ball at the backfield, getting up the field and scoring a touchdown, that was definitely big.
Is that a good place to do it? I mean, like the first play of that drive, if I was a quarterback, I'd be nervous dropping back and letting the pass rush come to me standing in the end zone. I was a little bit surprised by that. Maybe Penn State was too. I don't know.
And they have been getting to him all game long, so I thought it made perfect sense.
Okay.
I mean, when you got a defensive line that's in your face the entire night, and they're just thinking, oh, this is a freebie right here. Hit him right over the top.
Opening up the screen game, the reverse to Paris Campbell, those sort of plays. Obviously, that's just designed. They knew Penn State's defense was going crazy, being super aggressive. You got to find ways to get them off balance, and it took the Buckeyes a little bit of time, obviously, to get there. But once you realize that, hey, we can mix it up and use their aggression against them, which finally happened in the third quarter, it was a totally different game.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, it's Lettermen Live on a Tuesday with these guys. We're rehashing Ohio State, Penn State. Ohio State takes control of the Big Ten with that win on the road. They play Indiana on Saturday. And if there's been one theme from every single one of these shows brought to you by Byers Auto, has been that we're talking about an explosive play allowed by the defense. The second 93-yard touchdown allowed of the season. That's a school record. One time as a school record. Now they've matched it. Not the kind of history that you want to be making for the Silver Bullets. And it's just, I don't know, guys. I thought the linebackers played a lot better for Ohio State on Saturday night. But you had one situation where Shaun Wade loses a one-on-one matchup, and then you don't have a safety who can get him down. It's just, it doesn't even feel like it's different things happening all the time. It seems like the same issues every single week. Am I off base there?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think, guys are still kind of learning to play within this scheme. And obviously at week 5 going into week 6, you don't want those type of things. So you kind of want to get it rectified soon. I mean, the good thing is, we have time. When you look at the rest of the schedule down the stretch, there isn't one of those teams that's coming up on the horizon that kind of threaten you.
Yeah.
So you got time to kind of get that thing rectified.
It's kind of a tricky situation, though, Boom, right? I mean, you got 3-4 teams in a row that you should beat, but you also have that cloud maybe hanging over where we hear, maybe you can enlighten us, where you have a big emotional high. You go beat Penn State in a comeback. Hard to maybe get back up for that next week. How difficult is that to manage to get back ready? You're going home. You think you should win easily. You're a 27-point favorite against Indiana.
Well, this is the time where you figure it out. Obviously, you have to practice and figure out what it is that we're doing wrong and what schemes are we doing that aren't working. So this is the time, in practice and against teams like, Indiana, Minnesota, the next couple of games that are coming up, where we can figure this thing out. And hopefully we can definitely get it figured out and we can keep winning games.
Berm, they'll be doing it without Isaiah Pryor for the first half on Saturday night. What are the other options there?
Well, I think that the best option, as you wrote about earlier today, is Shaun Wade needs to play more. Urban said on Monday that it's going to come down to practice this week between Shaun Wade and Justin Wint and Brendan White. I think anybody who's watched Ohio State these first 5 games understands that Shaun Wade's a difference maker when he's on the field, even despite the 93-yard touchdown that was allowed on Saturday night. But I don't know that he's a safety.
Yeah.
I think that the Buckeyes obviously are in a position where they want to have the 4 or 5 best defensive backs on the field total. I imagine it'll probably be Justin Wint starting on Saturday, but again, if things go the way you think they should against Indiana, I think you'll see equal amount of time for Brendan White back there and Shaun Wade. I don't know that Isaiah Pryor will even play in the second half.
It sort of depends on how they play without him.
And for the people that are worried about this game being a copycat of last year's game against Iowa, coming off the Penn State win, the emotional and physical toll that one took on the Buckeyes last year, this is a totally different ball game than going to Iowa City and having to play at Iowa when you're coming home against Indiana. It's a totally different thing, and I know people want to make those sort of connections, but it's an unreasonable link to make.
Well, it's not unreasonable to make it.
It is, because you're at home.
It's a fourth quarter comeback
You're
against
at
Penn
home.
State, a top 10 game. I mean, that takes a lot out of you. These guys know it better than me, but I've seen it happen to other teams before.
Mm-hmm.
It was a physical game. Draymond Jones had to leave for a while with an ankle injury.
I get the reasons that people want to make the connection.
You're saying that it's unreasonable
I'm saying
to make
that
it.
the difference between playing at home against Indiana and going to Iowa, which is an extremely tough spot to play, is a large difference.
But if you have 8 things that are the same and 2 that are different, that's not an unreasonable comparison.
That's not necessarily true. Depends on how large the two things, how large individual parts are.
To Berm's credit, it's much harder going into a situation.
Yeah,
to
go back on the road where you're out of routine, and you have to play in a place like Iowa City, and it's all gray and dark and scary.
So
Pink
close
locker room.
You know, that pink locker room, as Boom said, takes a lot out of you.
Well, I'm not saying that Indiana is as good as Iowa, or that
Are
playing
you
on the road
predicting
is
that Indiana's going to win this weekend?
Absolutely.
Everybody just saw it.
They did not see that.
Everyone just heard
You
Austin
let me
say it.
finish. No, I'm not predicting that. Not even close. Ohio State will cover again this week easily, but that's neither here nor there. Berm, there was another interesting turn of events. That 175 recruits there for Penn State. I'm going to get these guys' thoughts on some other things James Franklin may have done later on Saturday night. But this was, you're saying that your opinion generally is that one game doesn't tip the scales, the outcome of the game. But that was a pretty important chance for both programs to put on a show, even if Penn State got to play host to all those guys.
And they both did. Ohio State goes into the toughest environment in football and wins on the road without college football's best player, without playing even close to their best game. And the recruits that are there watching both teams aren't naive to that. They watch it, and those guys are watching both sides. It's an opportunity for guys like Zach Harrison or Brian Brzee or Jack Sawyer or any of these guys. Those are 3 5-star defensive linemen watched as Larry Johnson's defensive linemen, once again, for the 3rd time in the last 4 years against Penn State, were the difference maker in this game. And
Without
one game
Nick Bosa.
without the best player in America. And again, one game doesn't matter to a recruit. The experience, the overall weekend is what matters. That's why Brenton Strange, the tight end from Parkersburg, West Virginia, committed to Penn State on Monday night, despite having an official visit to Ohio State planned for next month that he no longer will take. Because the game outcome doesn't really matter that much. But now when you talk about the last 3 years and you see how close these two programs are, then you start to look at the particulars a little closer. But again, when you're looking at it from a position-by-position standpoint, a tight end commits to Penn State based on what happened on Saturday. Ohio State threw to the tight end twice. One of them bounced off a face mask, and the other one, the tight end didn't see the ball coming or even look because he probably figured nobody's going to throw the ball to me because I'm a tight end at Ohio State. But
Stoney's not here to back that up. So.
But again, and I know Ohio State fans are watching this wanting to talk about Zach Harrison and Brian Brzee, again, the number 1 player in 2020, the number 2 player in 2019, number 3 player in 2021, and Jack Sawyer, all 3 defensive ends, 2 of them from Columbus, in Happy Valley watching that game, and those guys see the difference of what Larry Johnson's coaching is doing for Ohio State. So both teams come out of that looking good. Because that atmosphere at Penn State was absolutely insane. And this is the 3rd time I've been there. 3rd time I've been there for an Ohio State game, of course, and it's been electric every single time. And I don't know. I've talked to an Ohio State staffer earlier today who said that the atmosphere at Ohio Stadium on game day in the stadium is below average. And I know Buckeye fans don't like to hear that. I know that sometimes you play Tulane at Ohio Stadium, and every time we go anywhere, the team that we're going to see is playing Ohio State, so it does make it easier to get up, of course. But, it's a different world, and I think that there's ways that Ohio State fans and the stadium could make those recruiting visits even more impressive for these kids, because that does make a difference.
We had this conversation on Saturday night, Berm. I don't think that the atmosphere is bad at the Horseshoe. I think sometimes you can go there a bunch of times in a row and it becomes familiar and you pick out the things that aren't good. And every time, and he knows, I pointed this out to him, that every time a recruit comes in there for the first time and they're seeing 100,000 people and the shape of the building and the scarlet and gray everywhere in the tailgates, every recruit he talks to after says they're blown away. And I think there's something to it. I mean, to call it below average to me is unfair to Ohio State and their fans.
I think the point that I really responded was, as I just said, every time Ohio State goes anywhere, it's the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So it's always a great atmosphere when Ohio State shows up somewhere else. Number one, Ohio State fans are there. The traveling Ohio State fans are some of the best in the country and the loudest road fans in the country. But everywhere you go, and we'll see this in 2 weeks at Purdue. It's going to be a night game in West Lafayette. that place is going to be electric.
No, it's not.
It's going to be as far as Purdue goes. As far as Purdue goes, it's going to be
There's going to be
much
40%
better.
scarlet and gray.
It's going to be a louder
probably more than
Purdue.
that.
It's going to be a louder atmosphere in Ross-Ade than it normally is. That's what I'm saying. For Ohio State.
Electric might be a stretch, though.
Well, but not for Purdue fans.
They started 0-3. Are
Purdue
people
fans
still riding that
Yes.
train? They're not.
You owe me $1.50 because you bet against Boston. You bet against the Boilermakers 2 weeks ago, Rick Hall.
Drew Brees donated, $2 billion there?
Austin doesn't want to acknowledge that he couldn't handle the heat that Purdue was bringing
Can
Boston
one
College
of you
2
two guys
weeks ago.
defend Ohio State's fans putting 100,000 in the stadium, even for Tulane? I mean, come on.
I mean, that's obviously impressive, but I mean, I played there on several different occasions, and I played in
A couple,
yes. I played in some massive games, and I played in some not so important games there. To his credit, I mean, the stadium isn't that loud when you're playing a Tulane or you're playing a Bowling Green. It's just a normal day in the park.
But I think that's the same thing at Beaver Stadium, and they're playing Kent State. I mean, they're not. It's not like
Right,
they
it's
have a whiteout
exactly.
every week.
No
we were
question.
watching Syracuse and Clemson on Saturday, right?
Yeah.
Did you hear the crowd at Clemson?
No.
I did. They were loud.
No, they
For a
weren't.
noon game against Syracuse. They were, absolutely.
They were losing, so they were booing their
They
team.
were loud.
Give me a break. bro.
Loud. It's gotta always have the juice.
It doesn't always have to have
Yes,
the
it does.
juice, man.
Moving on.
Whatever. Anyway, so James Franklin, after that game, with these wonderful Penn State fans, decides to maybe go attack one. Gets held back by a staffer, then goes and says that he's going to become psychotic and basically intimates that the reason Penn State is great and Ohio State is elite is because guys aren't taking enough notes in class and that their cell phones are on. To me, it was weird because Franklin didn't take
a shot.
take responsibility for 4th and 5.
Right.
I don't know if you guys watched the press conference the way I did there covering the game, or if you've seen any of the clips of him and the fan mixing it up. But to me, as we go on with this recruiting week, and I didn't think that James Franklin came off as a winner from this. I thought it was pretty off-putting.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the way he handled the press conference, I did see bits and pieces of it. Didn't like it. Obviously, when a coach who is the decision maker, he said, I called the play, but you kind of could have took a little bit more onus from that and kind of gave a description on why you called that play when things were going so well with Trace McSorley carrying the football. I don't know. I didn't agree with him. I agree with you. I don't think he came on as a winner on that. I think you're going to have recruits kind of look at him and say, why'd you make that decision when things were going so well? When you had a quarterback playing so well, you guys had momentum, all things were going in your favor, and you kind of stalled your own team.
Yeah.
James Franklin is a used car salesman and always has been, and that was his way of just changing the topic and getting these kids that are there watching him to think, oh, we could be the difference maker. We're the piece that's missing. We won't go in there and skip taking notes.
The piece that's missing, they did enough to win that football game. Right. I mean, Boom, am I wrong about this play call? Look, Ohio State fans surely did backflips when they saw that was what they wanted to do on 4th and 5. And Greg Schiano, I think, also deserves a lot of credit for that twist and stunt game that they called to stop it. But I don't know, with 3 timeouts, I just couldn't believe that that's what Penn State decided to do.
It was very surprising. Great call by our defense, but I don't know what they were thinking. Like you said, they had 3 timeouts. They could have talked about it, figured out something, but that's the play that they went with. I'm glad they did it. It worked out for us, but very strange. Didn't really understand it, but it worked out in our favor, so I was happy.
It's like one of those old shows where, I think that they're going to do this, but that's exactly what they want me to think that they're thinking. So I'm going to think this. Yeah, and hey, it turned out. I was on the Ohio State sideline 3 or 4 feet away from a lot of the players watching that play, and they were all, bated breath, waiting, and then it happened, and they were just like, okay. And all of a sudden the celebration was on. And it was like, I don't think they could believe what just happened. Everybody in that stadium was expecting something where Trace McSorley was going to be running around like a chicken with his head cut off, either and throwing the ball to someone for a first down or scrambling for a first down.
Even the way that play transpired, and you'll see that on Buckeye Q tomorrow with Zach Bourne, I think every possible angle that they could have had on that play was defended. Draymond Jones was standing right in front of Trace McSorley after he gave away the football. Now, he's on an injured ankle. Was he going to make that play? He was in position to. We don't know what's going to happen. They chose that. It didn't work. Ohio State got the win. You don't have to quibble about the results later. And the College Football Playoff Committee is not going to be worrying about James Franklin's decision. They're just going to see that score on the road over a top 10 team. It was a wild one to cover. I don't expect it's going to be that way. That's my segue here for this week. Lettermen Row Live, brought to you by Byers Auto. Indiana on Saturday at 4 o'clock. No matter what Berm is trying to convince you of earlier, I think Ohio State is going to win handily. So unless you guys don't think Ohio State's going to win, I'm going to open it up just with what you want to see the Buckeyes accomplish on Saturday, what concerns you might have, or what player you think needs to step up and put on a show.
I know the first thing I want to see is I want to see this running game get back on track.
Yeah.
I want to see J.K. and Mike Weber kind of get their legs up underneath him and get back to the big runs, the big plays that we saw from him in the early part of the year, and get the play calling back on track.
Yeah. Boom.
I agree with Beanie. Definitely want to see the running game get going, and I would also like to see if Haskins gets some passes down the field, like we did the first couple of weeks. But just to see the offense get back on the good side, the upper side, and get in the groove of like Beanie said, just running the ball and making some big plays.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I don't think there's any mystery that the offensive line needs to dominate this game and do so with the running game early. But I also want to see Chase Young build off of last week because we watched one of the best single game performances by an Ohio State defensive lineman that I've ever seen. He had 10 quarterback pressures and 43 rushes last week.
That's crazy.
And those are Bosa numbers.
That is an insane number. And we've been waiting for that from Chase, especially with Nick out, wanting to see him kind of take the next step. But I want to see that continue. I want to see him I want to see that exactly. I want to see that be the consistent and the norm for Chase, because that's what it should be, because he is exactly what a defensive end is supposed to look like. And we finally saw him play like an All-American on Saturday. And so to me, I want to see a dominant game out of him as well.
Yeah, I think for me, it's got to be continuing with that defense. And like I said earlier, I thought that the linebackers did play their best game.
I agree. All three starting linebackers were champions.
Yeah, and Beanie, we joked before about that crazy stat from the Tulane game, and the starting linebackers having 0 tackles in a game, which is just almost unheard of with this school's tradition. I thought they played well. Look, people look at Trace McSorley and 450 yards of offense, and they're not happy about the explosive play. I get that. 2 93-yard touchdowns, the second time I brought it up. But if you had told anybody on the Ohio State team or any Ohio State fan that they're going to go on the road and Penn State's going to finish with 26 points, I think they would have, everyone you'd have asked would have said, cool, Ohio State's going to win the football game. The way that offense is going, the confidence they have, I think that's an acceptable amount when you're playing, at that point, the top-ranked scoring offense in the country. 55 points a game, hold them 30 points below that, you're going to take that. So keep that going, and then if you're Pete Warner, Malik Harrison, Tuff Borland, and then we'll see what happens at safety, because that's a situation that's just not going away.
Right.
All right. So that's Lettermen Row Live. That's Jeremy Birmingham. That's Boom Herron. That's Beanie Wells. I'm Austin Ward. We appreciate you all for joining us. We appreciate Byers Automotive for sponsoring us and hanging out with us. Hopefully we'll get George Kaufman back here in the coming weeks. We miss him.
Is he practicing his cheerleading?
He's probably in the gym right now, so that's, you got to give him some respect for that. So he'll be back on the sideline maybe soon. But we'll be right back here next Tuesday to talk about another game, preview another one, and cover Ohio State all year long right here at LettermenRow.com. We'll see you next time.